Hi, my name is Dave Nezzie. I am a program officer with the Waverley Street Foundation and a member of the SAFSF Board of Directors. And I'm joined with two amazing colleagues here based in New Mexico. And we're going to have a quick discussion about sovereignty, soil, and systems. And so, James, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your farm and the land that you steward?
Sure. My my name is James Skeet. My clan is Red Cheek Clan, Jadashi. And then my other paternal side is Kia'ani, which is the Leaning Tower. We have a farm on the west side of New Mexico, close to the Arizona border. And if you probably fly west from our place, it's about maybe 15 miles. But we have a farm at about 7,200 feet. And one of the things we're doing is growing where we're not supposed to be growing. We don't have a well, so we capture all the water, sequester all the water. And we've dove into, in the last couple of years, we've started this about 11 years ago, but our intention was really to become healthy again, to get our microbiome working again. And one of the ways we started doing that was to start growing our own garden and also having clean meats available for us. And in that process of 11 years, we'll share a little bit of the things that we've learned.
James, can you share how climate change is showing up on your land?
A very interesting concept of climate change. I think as Indigenous people, whenever there's changes in the climate, we either moved away or really tried to adapt. And so much of the religion in the Southwest is really based on our cosmology because of the complexity of the environment, the lack of water or thereof, or the abundancy of water when the monsoons come. How do we capture it? So there's, as this climate changes unfold through carbon in the wrong place in the atmosphere and creating these, what do you call greenhouse gases? What we're getting is a lot more vegetation areas that are becoming desertified and unable to sustain the past abundancy of plants growing, and also how the ground itself is heating up. And in that heating up, there's a lot of desertification, overgrazing, that becomes very critical on how we manage animals on the land. On top of that, we're seeing a lot of the rains come in sort of profusion, heavy rains or no rain at all. So I think that what we call the biotic pump is in a half cycle. So climate change is affecting us in that environment. It's becoming more brittle. And I think the research that we're doing and the things that we're learning on that farm is going to be crucial to how we farm in New Mexico.
That's fascinating, as it will, inspire a lot of other farmers that are in the same situation as you are.
Yeah.
Alena, thank you for being here. If you could introduce yourself and describe your role with the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association and how New Mexico Grown is also within your portfolio.
Yeah, Gowatsi, my name's Alena Paisano. I'm an enrolled citizen of the San Carlos Apache Nation from Southeast Arizona and Little Sun and Water Clan by adoption at Laguna, Pueblo. My role at the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association, I have the pleasure of serving as the approved Supplier Program Director, which really means that I steward a program that increases access for very, very small farmers. And when I say that, I mean over 65% of our almost 300 farmers are operating on 10 acres or less, to access institutional markets within 5 different administering agencies in our state. The market value of the New Mexico Grown program is about $6 million. And it is an incentive program supported by the state, but we also see it as an amazing place to be able to test innovations and further values-based procurement and really make tweaks to the procurement systems that enable growers to access markets in their own community, essentially from cradle to crane, right? So really wanting those foods to be able to be on the plates and for community members to build that relationship.
Great. And can you briefly explain what institutional procurement is and why it matters in shaping our food systems?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. So I'll answer in what is New Mexico institutional procurement? And so in New Mexico, again, we've built the New Mexico Grown program, really targeted at creating, kind of breaking down the systemic barriers to entry for institutional markets for producers. So by institutions, we define that as preschools, Head Starts, K through 12 schools, charter schools, senior centers, senior meal programs, and here in our state, that also includes programs administered by the Office of Indian Elder Affairs, BIE schools, and tribally controlled schools. All of those have vastly different systems, and they're deeply entrenched in bureaucracy. So we are, at our core, where we started, we're a food quality and food safety program. So we looked at the ecosystem of institutional food procurement and said, the problem is, there's so many costs just to be able to bid in. So how do we reduce that? So we created a gap alternative program. We've been growing it for about the past decade, starting with 12 producers. And as I mentioned, now we've grown into the hundreds. And for us, that represents a steady market opportunity for growers that were relying on direct markets. Best case scenario, those are farmers markets in our high income communities. Often the reality is roadside stands, flea markets, and things of that nature. And so by creating these pathways to sustainable markets, they're able to, really sustain a living off of farming. The other piece that we're really proud of is we're inclusive of foods that we grow here that do have climate resistance, and that really our kids and our elders want. And so we've really worked hard to make sure that this is a very place-based program.
And then a question that maybe both of you can provide your perspectives on as a farmer and as a professional in institutional procurement. As climate change affects what and how farmers are able to grow, could you talk about how should institutions shift procurement strategies?
I think that's, I'll stay away from the institutions because I've been institutionalized. No, the idea for us is how do we create tools in our toolbox to be able to deal with what's happening in the soil, what's happening in the atmosphere, what we're growing, the kinds of seeds we're growing, whether it's nutrient dense or is it, induced with fertilizers and things like that. So I think for us as a farmer, we're looking at nutrient dense foods, clean meats that can be available for our community. I think the way conventional farming has gone is really extraction and taking out a lot of things that as Indigenous people, we didn't do that because we were understanding the natural flow of things and using nature as our guide and the ethics behind that. So I think, for example, putting biochar in the soil, it's like a sink, it's a heat sink, it's also a water sink. It's also a nutrient-dense sink that holds the nutrient density in the soil. The half-life of biochar is 1,000 years. So if we do this, we're looking at seven generation down. The other thing that we're doing is we're neutralizing water that flows out of municipal spigots, chlorine, chloramide. And the way we do that is using compost, using humic acid and fulvic acid and things like that that will help neutralizing when we get it out into the drip lines. The other thing that we're doing in terms of our technology is making sure that we do not see water as a commodity, but as a very sacred entity, a part of nature, that we need to treat it with respect, which is what our ancestors have done. So what's happening, I think, in our culture on a larger scale is that we're moving so quickly into technology. And when you do that as a society and a culture, you lose the ethics. You lose the ethics. But the preservation culture is what brings the ethics back into the system so that we're not exploiting, we're not extractive, we're not controlling nature in such a way that we're abusing it.
Alena, any thoughts on?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, institutions have generally been a place where food is regarded as transactional and not much more, right? The focus is on increasing access without regard to the values of how the food got there, who it's supporting, how it's stewarding for generations ahead. And so for us, that looks like values-based procurement, which can be defined in a multitude of ways. And I think, most importantly to the system is, again, making sure that we center relationship. So we're in an era in which that we spend very little time thinking about how we procure our food, putting less energy into that, right? Those are seen as unnecessary administrative expenses by institutions. And so in our model, we promote direct relationships between growers and buyers around the state, which does mean more work. And so for institutions to be able to step up to that challenge and meet the growers where they're at in that and say, you know what? I need to stretch my understanding, my food literacy, and build a relationship with my farmer, with the land, so I can appreciate and empathize the true cost of getting that food into my program. I think the other thing is really building systems that have a lot of resilience and flexibility. And so again, by using this sort of decentralized model and really community-driven value chains where we're sort of stacking functions and infrastructure, we're able to be more responsive if there are product shortages or floods, things like that. The other piece is building, again, flexible systems around contracting and looking at being able to adjust for the real cost of food. So some examples, when we see formal bid systems that are established far in advance, we saw this during the pandemic, for example, you set up a bid with all good intention 3 years ahead, then the price rises 40% overnight. Then farmers are losing in that, right? And so one, creating flexible purchasing agreements, and then two, really investing in the knowledge of the folks that are purchasing food within our institutions so that they know how to pivot. They know what their sort of rights, and they're empowered to make decisions that are still meeting their mission. And really, at the end of the day, it's about institutions seeing themselves as a core stakeholder and a value chain participant that's really responsible for dismantling some of the trauma around food in our institutions and uplifting health and uplifting sovereignty, and in this case, utilizing state dollars to advance local goals and investments into future generations.
Well, I wish we had more time to continue this conversation, but on behalf of Waverley Street, as we're committed to, being in New Mexico and being in this space, working with Indigenous communities and working with local stakeholders. I look forward to the future conversations that we have in collaborating and coordinating and bringing some of these solutions and ideas, to the forefront to serve our tribal communities. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
We look forward to seeing you next year in Savannah, Georgia for the 2026 Forum.